she doesn't give herself enough credit. The things that she dealt with. My mother had my brother, she didn't even graduate from high school. Got married, had a baby, and turned around, had another baby, was divorced, separated, divorced by the time she was 21, hadn't even graduated again, high school. You know, and she went from this marriage that fell apart, and she loved my dad. They were just too young. And she just latched on to the first man she thought could help take care of her, and he was horrible. He gets a little mention in the book, not as much negative press as I would like to have given him. But you know, I don't give him very much credit in my life for anything except for the bad stuff. But he was horrible to her, and he was horrible to us, and she just endured and endured and endured, and you know, she had an alcoholic father, and you know, she's just one of those, I could write a book about her, and I think that people would find the same inspiration, and it's because it's a very parallel story. She coped and she dealt. She graduated summa cum laude from the university. She's been a school teacher for 25 years now.
Wow.
And you know, she got away from the abusive situation, and she lives by herself and takes very good care of herself, and she has a beautiful home, and you know, she's got a good life, and she endured much more abuse, I think, than I did. We argue sometimes who was who got the worst end of the stick, and I could make a case that she did, and she would make a case that I did. And she says that she doesn't know how I've dealt with all that stuff, but it's because of her. You know,
it's beautiful.
I mean, I find strength in my family to cope and go on, but the reason I have the ability to find that strength, I believe, is because of my mother.
That's beautiful. Like I said, it just rings, the mother love of that book, it really rings through.
And it doesn't stop there. Actually, Angela McFetridge is my mother-in-law. She is Greg's mother, and that's my pen name, and I wrote the book after she had read some excerpts. And she said, you really should write that as a book. You should put that together and write it as a novel, because it would be very relevant. And she said, you can evoke emotion, and that's the sign of a good writer. And unfortunately, she passed before I finished the book. So I wrote using her name, so there's some more mother love for you.
It's and you know, in your book, when your mother-in-law did pass away, I cried. She was a really beautiful soul.
She was a wonderful woman, and I'm very close. She has two sisters who live in England, and I am in touch with them very frequently, probably a monthly basis. We email and I call them from time to time. And they haven't gotten their book. I mailed it, and they haven't received it yet, and they're so excited because they've read some of the book. I've sent them bits and pieces as I was writing it, and I didn't tell them at first that it was all true. And they said, you know, how in the world did you dream up this James guy?
Oh my goodness.
They didn't know, and they said, well, how did you dream him up? What a pig he is. And I said, yeah, he's a pretty nasty character. And after them reading it for a while, I finally told them, that's my ex-husband you're reading about. They're like, no, it's not. I said, oh yes, it certainly is. And they couldn't believe that, that I actually had found and married that guy.
Knowing you now, you know, because I like the way I see you, you know, you would pick someone like that straight away, you know.
It's live and learn, you know. The hindsight is definitely 20/20, and now, even in my professional life and in people I work with, I always can spot somebody who's pulling a scam, you know, and I don't like it. I can spot it a mile away, and my poor daughter, she's going to have a terrible time finding a man that I'm going to give her the go-ahead on, because I'm going to be looking.
I wondered about that.
and it's not going to be easy to slide that past me, and you know, I'm lying. It's like, my kids, you can do anything. I don't care how bad you screw up. Don't lie to me about it. Lying to me, I think, after all that I've been through, that's the one piece of baggage that I carry with me. I can't stand to be lied to. It doesn't matter how small the lie. You know, like I asked my husband today, did you eat lunch? He said, yeah. I said, what'd you have? He said, leftovers. I'm like, there was no leftovers in the refrigerator. Don't lie to me. I'm like a lawyer. I'm like right on top of him, you know. So I have That's my baggage that I carry.
That's-
And it's amazing that that is the only piece of baggage that I have after all of that.
Amazing. That's a true gift you have to be able to release that, because you haven't received child support, you were harassed, like we haven't even touched on the level of harassment that you went through following, leaving America, to the point where you're a convicted felon.
Well, I'm not convicted.
Or
I am a wanted felon.
That's the word,
I
wanted.
am a fugitive from justice in the United States because of James's ability to lie, and he's just so esoteric with it. It just flows out of him like the truth. I mean, if you've ever seen someone like Jimmy Swaggart or one of those televangelists that can just spit it out there like it's the God's truth, and he can do that. And the judge thinks that I'm the scourge of the earth, and he wants me arrested and brought back to Florida to face charges for what? I don't know. For contempt, because when I came to Canada, the Canadian court system looked at my case and said, what is this mess? What happened here? What did you do? Did you run over this judge's dog? That's what the judge asked me in court.
Oh my goodness.
Did you run over this judge's dog? Like, he absolutely cannot stand you. And he said, it's not supposed to be like that. It's not supposed to be personal. The court battles, even though they rage on in the book, for a couple of chapters, that's several years of my life spent.
Is it?
It's years, yes.
Oh.
Years.
And the male, like the male harassment, where he...
Yeah. Cyber stalking is a fairly new thing.
Oh, I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, cyber stalking, using the internet to stalk someone, and stalking people through the mail. It was so new when it was happening that the police didn't know what to do with it. Even though I was able to, and this is something else I hope people can learn from the book, if you're being cyber stalked, you can cope with it. There are ways to stop it. At the time, I didn't know that it was him. I found out that it was him. I was getting mail, and things like vacation guides, new vinyl siding, just the stuff you get in the mail, your junk mail. And it's like, wow, I'm getting an awful lot of junk mail. And we had signed up for a draw there was a 65 Mustang at the mall, and we signed up for a draw. And the mail started happening not long after. I told my husband, I said, I'm going to go down there and give them a piece of my mind, because they've obviously sold my address to the junk mail people, whoever they are. But that wasn't what the problem was. And I was getting phone calls, and Amway and Herbalife and dating sites and all these different things, weight loss and life coaches, and people were all contacting me, we received your request for information. And that first email that I got, because it was coming to my physical postal mail, and it was coming into my email. And the first email that I got that said, we received your request for information. I said, wait a minute. So I wrote them back. I said, how/when/where did you get my contact information? And they said, well, you filled out a web form. I said, okay, no, I didn't. So I said, is there any way you can track where that came from? And that company, they logged the IP address of the visitors to their website. And they gave me the IP address that was connected to my request for information. So I wrote it down. I didn't know what to do with it, but I wrote it down. And I started doing that, so I started emailing all these companies saying, where did you get my email address? Where did you get my address? Where did you get my name? And I started finding it was that same IP address over and over and over again. And so my husband came home from work. I said, what can we do to find out who owns an IP address? He said, oh, that's easy, Hot Frog. And he types in a web address, and he pops in the IP address, and sure enough, it was James, right there on the screen.
The harassment was so severe, you had to have your mail delivery stopped. They wouldn't even deliver your mail anymore.
Yeah, the mail got so bad that we were living in Nova Scotia, and the mail was delivered by hand to the door, and the mailman would come with stacks and stacks of mail. And finally, he came to the door and said, I'm sorry, I can't deliver your mail anymore.